In this lesson, we're going to look at some of the math functions available. So here I have a variable x that is set to 23.347453, etc., etc. And I'm going to look at some different ways that I can round this. So the first one I'm going to look at is just the normal round function, what you would expect rounding to do. So I'm going to say document dot write x, but then I'm going to round this off. So to round it, what I use is the math class, so it's a capital M, dot, and then inside that math class there are a bunch of functions. And as soon as I hit dot, we can see some of these. ABS is absolute value. Here we have cosine, sine, tangent, all those. Let's see, what else do we have? Floor. We're going to be using that one. F rounds. So there's all types here. We're just going to talk about a few of them. We're going to talk about floor. We're going to talk about round. Here's the one that I'm looking for. We're going to talk about ceiling. So I'll go ahead and choose round for now. So math.round. And then in parentheses, because round is a function, I put whatever I want to round, and I want to round x. So I'm writing out math.round and then x. Run this, and I get, let me zoom in here, I get 23. So when I round, it is rounding to the nearest whole number, the nearest integer. So 23.34, that 3 obviously means it's going to round down. If I were to update this, make this say an 8, refresh it, then predictably it rounds up to 24. So math.round rounds to a whole number or an integer. Another one that we can use is document.write math.floor, and it's written the same way. So, and I keep missing my semicolon, there we go. Okay, so math.floor, and then in quotes x, and I have two ending parentheses here because one starts the write function, one starts the, or it contains the x. Floor is what we used in the previous video. If you watched the previous one where I did the random number and I did math.floor, math.floor, and I probably should have put a break in there. Let's put a break after this one so that we don't see them on the same line. There you go. So rounds as we would expect. Let me drag this down so we can see both. So 23.8 rounds up. Math.floor is always going to round down. So it's going to take off all the decimals. Does not matter if it's 0.99999, it's still going to be a 23. So then the opposite of that, you might be able to guess this even though we haven't seen it. Ceiling. Now they abbreviate ceiling. Some languages actually write the whole thing out and they put the whole word ceiling. JavaScript, just a CEIL, but that is just short for ceiling. So floor rounds down, ceiling does what you would expect it to do, and it rounds everything up. So now this would be, and let me concatenate my breaks in here. There we go. So now 24, 23, 24, because floor rounds down, ceiling rounds up. And it's the same thing. If I come back here now and I change this to, let's just do 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1. And if I refresh this, well, 23.111 is obviously going to, when we round it the way we normally round, it's going to round down to 23. Floor is going to round it down. Ceiling, even though it's a bunch of ones, will round up. Then lastly, what if I want to keep some decimal places? All three of these get rid of the decimal places. So let's get somewhere round up here. There we go. Okay, so if I have this nice long decimal, but I want to keep, let's say I want to round off to the hundredths place. So I want to round off to 23.28. Well, what I need to do there is just a tad bit different. So document.write. This time, this isn't a part of the math class. It's actually a part of the float or the decimal class. So right now this is being treated like a decimal or float, and a part of that is a function that rounds. So what we do is we do x dot to fixed. So to fixed is a function that sets it to a fixed number of decimals. And in that function, I need to provide in the parentheses, now notice I'm not putting x this time because I already have the x here. What goes in here is how many decimal places do I want. So if I wanted to round to the hundredths place, that would be 2 decimals. So if I run this, there you go, 23.28, and it rounds as you would predict. So if I change that to a 5 now, that means that 8 should round up to a 9, and it does, 23.29. If I wanted 4 decimal places, there you go, 4 decimal places, etc. So these first 3, round, floor, ceiling, are all ways to round to the nearest whole number or integer. To fixed, you actually apply that to the number itself. So if I had put in a number here, I could do something like this, 57 point whatever. Let me go ahead and put this in parentheses so it is fixing the entire number. Hit refresh. And there you go. So I can actually write an entire number in there and round it off. But generally, those numbers are going to come from a variable. So you'll just put the variable dot and then however many decimal places you want. So those are 4 of our math functions. Oh, and I forgot the previous one that we just did was math.random. So let's go ahead and look at that real quick. It's not one of the rounding ones, but we'll go ahead and talk about that in this video. So if I write math.random, random is a function, does not take any arguments. I'm not sure why it automatically put 0 in there for me. So it just looks like this. Math.write, math.random. Math.random gives us a random number. However, that random number is, and I don't have my break again, so let's make this cleaner and easier for you to read. There we go. So math.random gives me a random integer, sorry, not integer, decimal. And every time I refresh, you can see it's changing. So it's a new random decimal, and it's always going to be between 0 and 1. So when we wanted to do the random number yesterday or in the previous video, then what we had to do was we had to then multiply that by, you know, say like I wanted to go up to 100. So I'd multiply it by 100, and then that's going to move my decimal place over 2 places. So there we go, 497 point, 35 point, whatever. So this decimal would have been 0.0204, it moved it over 2 places. So it always gives us a decimal, and then we can work from that decimal to get to whatever we want using multiplication and one of our math functions.